One of the leading contributing factors that would suggest that we could see a rise in demand and use of cryptocurrencies would be the weakening of the United States dollar. We have an article here from Watcher Guru that does talk more about BRICS and their plans to pull away from the US dollar and how that could potentially impact things. This then could pave the way for things like XRP to come into the spotlight more. So with that being said, guys, I do have a link to this article down in the description below, and let's go ahead and get started. From Watcher Guru, BRICS to completely ditch the US dollar in 3 years. The BRICS Bank, commonly called the New Development Bank, or NDB, officially announced a 3-year plan to completely end reliance on the US dollar. The 3-year de-dollarization initiative will lead to BRICS settling trade in local currencies and not the US dollar. The NDB is finding alternative ways to replace the US dollar from dominating the global financial sector. NDB will provide details to BRICS leaders, highlighting the means to diminish transactions made in the US dollar. So before I go further into this, one thing I want to point out to you is what countries are a part of BRICS. BRICS is grouped by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The BRICS nations encompass about 27% of the world's land surface. Not a huge relevant thing here, but this is 42% of the global population. 42% of the global population, okay? So if they do this, which they're laying the groundwork right now for, it very well could have an impact. How significant of an impact? Well, I'll be talking a little bit more of that at the end of the article. This goes on to say BRICS announces a 3-year plan to ditch the US dollar. The NDB has already outlined its first idea of lending loans to other developing countries in local currencies. The bank suggested to stop lending loans in the US dollar and limit the number of settlements in the USD. The move adds pressure on the dollar, making it demand to decrease by a smaller margin. However, the 3-year de-dollarization initiative could add further blows to the prospects of the US dollar. The NDB would provide guidelines to boost the usage of local currencies and strengthen the native economy of BRICS nations. Businesses in developing countries could thrive if local currencies are put forward, as they don't lose out on foreign exchange charges. Therefore, the global financial sector could change rapidly by 2026, leading the way to a new world order. The financial power could tilt from the west to the east, and developing countries could take the driver's seat. BRICS already controls 30% of the global economy, and the numbers could shoot up if they completely end reliance on the US dollar. Says, read here to know how many sectors in the U.S. will be affected if BRICS stops using the dollar for trade. The American economy could be the first to crash, as the U.S. will have no means to fund its deficit. The prices of all commodities would skyrocket, leading to an imbalance in the economy in the coming years. In conclusion, if BRICS plays their cards well by 2026, the U.S. dollar will lose its power in the international markets. Local currencies will dominate the financial sector, and one among them could potentially become the next global reserve currency. Okay, so one of the things that I really want to highlight is that of those nations that were mentioned, one of them should really stand out to you, which is Russia. Why am I pointing that out? Because with the war that's going on with Ukraine, we have to look at how has that impacted their economy, and especially their currency. So if they're going to be moving over to this new model system, what is the strength of the ruble? Well, just recently, it fell to being 100 rubles to 1 US dollar. It was one of the worst currencies in the entire world. And think about how big Russia is as a nation. I think it was the 3rd worst. So how is it that Russia has responded to this with the beginning of the war? So one of the things that happened is that you saw lots of sanctions take place. A lot of countries said that we're not going to be doing trades with Russia. And lo and behold, you started to see a devaluing of the Russian ruble. A lot of people are like, well, if we're not going to be doing business with you, then why do we even need your currency? Especially if Russia still needs to do things. And guess what? Through those trades, it's just weakening their own currency, the ruble. So Russia had an idea. So they raised their inflation rates up. They said that also, if you want to buy our oil, you're going to have to buy it using our rubles. And then they also control certain amounts of foreign currency, and they've been using that currency to prop up their own currency, the ruble. So they're buying their own currency against themselves. The problem with that is that you can only do that for so long, right? If you only have so much of a storage of foreign currencies and you're using that to try and keep your stuff up, it's just a ticking time bomb. And guess what? That's what we saw. As time has gone by with that war, there eventually came a point where even though it looked like the Russian ruble had bounced back, it was strong. In fact, it was better than what it was before the war started. It started going down and down and down. And then it got to worse. It got to the worst point that it's had during the entire war. And then they've essentially tried doing the same thing again. So they are on the verge of hyperinflation. This war is very much stagnant at the moment. It doesn't look like there's an end in sight. Both sides are fighting. Any progress that's being made is very, very slow. And so because of that, since we don't have an end in sight at the moment, it really does look like the Russian ruble is just going to continue on down this path. Where is the incentive for other countries to wanting to use the ruble? And then you take a look at places like China, right? China is doing trades, sure, with Russia, but the more that Russia becomes this extremist and kind of setting a bad standard in the entire spotlight of the world, it really raises questions of how much do you want to do business with them? And the other thing, too, is that Russia's basically giving India a significant discount in their oil shipments. So for India, sure, they can be able to get their oil from them. There's still a little bit of a relationship that's there. But besides that, Russia doesn't really have a huge market space of offerings of commodities, of things that people would actually want to use. So again, it's one of the biggest nations that's out there. It does have a huge population. But when we're talking about these specific countries, at the end of the day, if they're going to be wanting to use their own currencies, what is the strength of their actual own economies? And especially with Russia being included in that, it's not good. So with this being 3 years out, another thing to keep in mind is that look at what has been happening here locally in the United States. And with that, you have things like the CHIPS Act. So we're going to be seeing more jobs being built in the United States instead of outsourcing to, say, relying everything on Taiwan. You're going to see the manufacturing of different computer chips here in the United States, more jobs, and those chips, superconductors, things like that, it's going to be highly sought after because we use it in so many different things. That is an important element that really does come into play here. Also with green energy, you see a rise in demand from younger generations, especially that want to have things like electric cars, solar panels, hydroelectric, those sort of things, right? And we're starting to see some more developments out of Georgia and those green energy plants it's getting developed. It's going to be one of the biggest ones in the entire world. So the United States is not sitting back and allowing all the other countries to be the leading innovators, to take control of the lead. And think of this too, right? If we do end up shifting more and more to green energy, and by doing that, we become less reliant upon fossil fuel or oil for many different things, that's even less of a reason to say that we need to do trade with a country like Russia. So that's only going to continue to hurt Russia. Let me know what you guys think about all this down in the comments below. Do you think that this change at that point, even in the short term, do you think that it's going to have a huge impact on cryptocurrency? Do you really think that this is going to give an opportunity for XRP to be the solution overall for everything that we just talked about? I would love to know what you guys think, and I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I do have my own Telegram group. You can find a link to that down in the description below. It is Team Crypto Atlas. I'd love to see you guys there. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. A double shout out thank you to WeLoveSafeMoon.com, Victor Vegas, SafeMoon Oz for being higher level patrons. Thank you to my YouTube members for your support as well. God bless, and we'll see you in the next episode.